Good morning. This is another beautiful day that the Lord had made, and we are going to rejoice and be glad in it, and especially because of this day of grace, while the Lord is calling out a people for His name. And at the end of the day, He will come back for His bride. We're continuing to study from the book of Ruth, with the general subject as being the bride and the bridegroom. And today we're going to focus on the subject of Ruth serving. Now, Ruth is the Gentile bride, and she, in chapter 2, is about to meet the bridegroom who will marry her, and they will be a picture of the bride and the bridegroom. And we'll be focusing on Ruth serving, because she decided in chapter 1 to be a person of faith in the living God. Now, what comes after saving faith is serving to the glory of God, and we'll see Ruth doing this. And so thank you for coming, and welcome to Bible Study with Betty. Ruth chapter 2, verse 1. And Naomi had a kinsman or relative of her husband's, a mighty man of wealth, of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. Now the name Boaz means strength. And so Naomi remembered her husband's relative, his close relative, who was a mighty man of wealth, and that his name means strength. And so now she had been bitter because of the loss of her husband and 2 sons. And now, since she's back in the country of Judea and the city of Bethlehem, she's gonna begin to start to have her bitterness lifted, because she will be looking at the handiwork of the Lord. And so now in verse 2 it says, and Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him in whose sight I shall find grace. And she said unto her, go, my daughter. So these are words of faith spoken by Ruth. And she was assured that when she went out to look for work in the field, that she was sure to find the grace of God there for her, and that she would find grace in the sight of the owner of the field. And verse 3 says, and she went and came and gleaned, that is, reaped the crops, or picked the crops. After reaping means picking or reaping the crop. Verse 3, and she went and came and gleaned or gathered in the field after the reapers or the other workers. And her hap was to light on a part of the field belonging unto Boaz, who was of the kindred of Elimelech, Ruth's father-in-law, who had now passed. When it says her hap was to light on this field belonging to Boaz. It means her lot, or through divine providence, she happened to land on the part of the field that belonged to Naomi's near kinsman. Verse 4, and behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said unto the reapers, the Lord, or Jehovah, be with you. And they answered him, the Lord bless thee. So Boaz was a man of faith who believed in Jehovah God, the Lord of redemption. Then said Boaz unto his servant that was set over the reapers, or the man who was in charge of the workers of the field, he said unto him, whose damsel is this? And so Boaz is inquiring because the supervisor should know who's working in the field. And so he inquires of him as to who this young woman is. And the servant that was set over the reapers answered and said, it is the Moabitess damsel that came back with Naomi out of the country of Moab. And so the servant knew who this young woman is, and he refers to her as a Moabitess that came with Naomi out of the country of Moab. And she said, the servant is speaking and saying what Ruth said to him. And she said, I pray you, or I beg you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves, or among the grains of barley. So she came and had continued even from the morning until now, that she tarried a little in the house. She took a short break. Other than that, she's been gleaning and working along with the reapers since the early morning until this time. Verse 8, then said Boaz unto Ruth, so they're in close proximity to each other. So Boaz says unto Ruth, hearest thou not, my daughter? I want you to be sure and hear this. Go not to glean in another field, neither go from here, but abide here close or fast by my maidens. Stay close to the other young women who are of my country. He says in verse 9, let thine eyes be on the field that they do reap, and go thou after them. You follow them as they reap. Have not I charged the young men that they shall not touch thee? So Boaz began to make sure he was protecting Ruth from the young men. And then Boaz go on to say to Ruth, and when thou art athirst, or when you are thirsty, go unto the vessels and drink of that which the young men have drawn. The young men were the drawers of water at this time in the history of Israel. And then Ruth responded in verse 10. Then she fell on her face and bowed herself to the ground. This is not worshiping him. This is an act of respect. And said unto him, why have I found grace in thine eyes, that thou shouldest take knowledge of me, saying, I am a stranger? or I come from another country, I am not a Jew. And verse 11, and Boaz answered and said unto her, It has fully been showed me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of thine husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother, and the land of thy nativity, or the land of your origin, and are come unto a people which thou knewest not heretofore before. So Boaz says to Ruth, everything concerning you and your mother-in-law and her family has been told to me in detail. And I'm taking knowledge of you because of how you responded to your mother-in-law by following her unto a people that you never known before. And then he blesses Ruth in verse 12. The Lord reward thee or recompense thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust. In other words, Ruth's response and her readiness to serve her mother-in-law, thereby serving the Lord, Boaz recognized this and wanted to bless her from the Lord, not from himself, but that the Lord would give her a full reward. And this lets us know that when God rewards, it can be no reward, partial reward, or full reward. But his benediction for Ruth was that the Lord God of Israel, because she had come to trust in the Lord, under whose wings she had come, that he give her a full reward. Now Ruth responds again in verse 13. Then she said, Let me find favor in thy sight, my Lord. And notice it's the lowercase l, because Boaz is not the Lord. He's just a very wealthy Hebrew man. For that, then she said, Let me find favor in thy sight, my Lord. She's just verifying with him that he's a gracious man. For that thou hast comforted me, and for that thou hast spoken friendly unto thine handmaid, though I be not like unto one of thy handmaids, I am not a Hebrew. Then Boaz says in verse 14, And Boaz said unto her, At mealtime come thou hither, and eat of the bread, and dip thy morsel in the vinegar. And she sat beside the reapers. So he invites her to eat along with the rest of them. But Ruth, being humble and filled with the Spirit of God, she didn't exalt herself. Instead of sitting in a prominent place, she sat with the reapers. And he reached her, that is, Boaz reached her parched corn, and she did eat and was sufficed. She had enough and left. She reserved some. She didn't eat all of her food. She left some, and we'll see later that she reserved it for her mother-in-law. Verse 15, And when she was risen up to glean after lunch, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. In other words, he's making provision for Ruth. And let verse 16, and let fall also some of the handfuls of purpose for her, and leave them, that she may glean them, and rebuke her not. So he's saying, make sure she gets some of the best handfuls of grain. Verse 17, so she gleaned in the field until the evening, and beat out that she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. So this is barley harvest. They're reaping the fields, and an ephah is a certain amount that is a dry measure. In Israel, they weighed money, and they weighed grain and all the products that they live with. Just like we count money, they weighed money. And so it was about an ephah of barley, which would be about 1 bushel or 3 pints. Verse 18. And she took it up, that is the barley, and went into the city. And her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, talking about Naomi. And she brought forth and gave to her that she had reserved after she had sufficed. That is, in verse 14, she ate as much as she wanted, and she left some for her mother-in-law. So she gave that portion to Naomi. And her mother-in-law said unto her, where hast thou gleaned today? Where have you worked today? And where labored you, or where wroughtest thou? And then she says, blessed be he that did take knowledge of thee. And she, Ruth, showed her mother-in-law with whom she had wrought or labored, and said, the man's name with whom I wrought today is Boaz. And that was Elimelech's near kinsman. Verse 20, and Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. So Naomi's bitterness is lifted even more when she sees what has happened to Ruth as she went to work that day. And Naomi said unto her, the man is near of kin unto us, not me, but unto us, one of our near kinsmen, or one of our close relatives. Verse 21, and Ruth the Moabitess said, he said unto me also, he said, she's letting Naomi know, he said unto me also, thou shalt keep fast or close by my young men until they have ended all my harvest. And that's referring not only to the barley harvest, but also the wheat harvest, that I want you, Ruth, to stick close to the young men that are working in my fields. Verse 22, and Naomi said unto Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, even though she's an in-law, Naomi still considers her daughter. It is good, my daughter, that thou go out with his maidens or his young women, that they meet thee not in another field. And this speaks of being separated from the world to serve the true and living God. So she was to stick close by the young men and follow after the young women as they reap the fields. So she kept, that is, Ruth kept fast or close by the maidens of Boaz to glean until the end of barley harvest and of wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. So she's a chaste young woman, and she is devoted not only to Naomi, but she's devoted to the living God. And she has found favor in the eyes of Boaz, who is a wealthy Hebrew, who later we will see in chapter 3 is going to purchase her in order that she might be his wife. And so redemption is always we are the Lord's purchased possession, and he purchased us by his blood, and he was raised again for our justification. So in chapter 1, Ruth makes a decision to serve the living God. And from that, she begins to serve not only the Lord, but to serve her mother-in-law. And her behavior and conduct leads her to the field of Boaz, and his name means strength. And as we follow in chapters 3 and 4, we'll see him always labeled as the kinsman redeemer. And this lets us know that we must be related to the Lord in some fashion, either by birth or by naturalization or some way. And that the Redeemer must be willing to buy us, and the Redeemer must be able to buy us. And so this is a type of the bride choosing the church to be his bride. So thank you all for listening. Next week we'll be in chapter 3 of the book of Ruth. So have a great day, and remember to view my other videos on Matthew, Hosea, Proverbs, the Revelation, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, the book of Nahum, the book of Malachi. All of these are on video, and I'm also teaching from the book of Romans. So thank you all for listening, and my email address is bjt1125@yahoo.com. So you all have a great day. Bye.